to the Airthings Masters. It's the third day of the preliminary stage, and after tomorrow, we will know who the top 8 of the 16 players are that are qualifying to the knockout. You might be wondering why the video is called what it is. I mean, obviously some of you are like, oh my god, what a clickbait title. I don't know, that's just your complaining voice. No, this is actually a very legitimate day, in fact, because today it was announced that Magnus Carlsen, Play Magnus Group, signed a sponsorship deal with Puma, the attire company. I'm sure they do other things, but I primarily know them as attire. Now, this is massive. Magnus, to his credit, and his team and everything they're involved in on the corporate front, they are pushing chess to a much, much larger audience. Now, obviously, he has a very clear financial incentive in this, so good for him for getting the sponsor. But you just never used to see chess mixed in with such massive company names. So hopefully, and last year he did MasterCard. Puma is huge. I mean, everybody has at some point either seen someone wearing Puma or wore it themselves. So, and if you haven't, well. Anyway, on that note, so that was honestly very cool news. And then we have games. As always, we have games. So how is Magnus going to celebrate his massive sponsorship? Well, he's going to celebrate it by winning some chess games, obviously. His opponent is Erik Hansen, who is having a monster event in the first 2 days, crushing people. But today, I called this yesterday, Erik Hansen's Day of Death, because he has to play GIRI, Yesipenko, he has to play Nodirbek, he has to play Magnus, not in that order. And Magnus plays into the main line Ruy Lopez, and I believe he plays into this. In fact, he plays all the way into this position because yesterday Hansen was playing this against Duda, and Hansen played knight d7. You might remember, and I think we got knight d2 here, and then I think d5 c4. This was the game. So today Hansen decides to play queen c7 straight away. He doesn't go back with knight d7. Magnus plays knight b to d2. We have takes, and the knight comes back to c6. Now, in these Spanishes, I mean, there is just so much complexity. Honestly, there is an overwhelming amount of complexity. And you'll notice that white can push, white can take. White really isn't interested in taking whatsoever, because why the hell did you put your bishop here to just not allow it to ever get out? So white is really in the business of pushing at the right moment and activating the bishops on the diagonals if the center were to open up. Knight to b3. Hansen plays a5. Black is trying to expand on the queen side. That is where he is stronger, and he is doing just that, coming forward. We have bishop to d7. Now, a3 kicks out the knight. The knight goes back to c6. Right now, if white were to play the move d5, black would play knight to a5. And again, you have to take assessment of the position. Has white succeeded in achieving his goals? My sound means no. White has not. I mean, black has a very good position, good promising aspects of the queenside pressure later on, opening things up. b2 could be a weakness. So Hansen's playing a really, really nice game so far, but Magnus is as well. Queen to e2, targets the pawn on b5. We keep the center tension for a little bit while longer. These 4 pieces are kind of caught in an unbreakable bond, all based around the d4 square. So what does black do? He plays the move queen to b7, which defends the b5 pawn, but also could use it as a weapon in the future. He might play b4. That move might happen in the future. That move might not happen in the future. I know what happens in the future. Not like in your future. Well, you're going to watch this entire video. You're going to do it without ad block because you appreciate the many hours of free content that might be instructional for you. Right? Bishop to d3. Magnus is like, yo, come and push this pawn. Come and do it, because when you do, my knight will go to c4, and now I'm going to win this battle. So you're going to take me, and I told you a while ago, folks, if these bishops get to a position where e5 is possible, like something like this, white is just going to destroy black. Like, it's going to be real bad. So let's just not have that, yeah? Rook a b8. Erik is staying patient. Magnus plays rook e to c1. Magnus here has a choice. He can play rook b1, but he doesn't watch my content, so, you know, I would understand why the move rook b1 did not occur. Instead, he was thinking to put a rook on c1. The question really is, where do you put your rooks, right? He goes here because I'm sure in the future he's going to play like this. You can play like this right away, rook a b1. Maybe you think it's stupid because if you don't get to actually play b3, why the hell did you play rook b1? Like, what is it? Right, so instead he plays a move that looks more useful. Hansen now takes on d4, and he uses this as a moment to bring his knight to the middle. So he takes, puts the knight in the middle, is threatening here. Magnus plays bishop back to c2. Hansen plays rook f, e to e8. Rook f, e to e8. He has a nice position, honestly. White hasn't really achieved his goals. I mean, if White wants to do anything, he might have to play f4 at some point. He might have to actually get aggressive. So Magnus goes back to e1. When you see this from an opponent, folks, when you see rook c1 and a couple moves later, rook e1, even if his name is Magnus Carlsen, and I understand how difficult that might be, even if his name is Magnus Carlsen, you know something's going on. Like, you know this is not the way chess is played. Like, you just don't. So, what does Black do? Black plays h6. Good waiting move. Honestly, not changing the position a whole lot. Bishop g5 is impossible, but I mean, I mean, this was never in White's intention. But h6 is just always a flexible move. There are long-term opportunities to play g5 and create some sort of attack. It's obviously not going to happen right away. It's more like, Magnus, what do you want? Do something. Do something. What are you going to do? Right? Rook d1. Okay, great. Bishop f8. So maybe he's going for g6, bishop g7, reroute, typical in the Rui. Magnus finally has enough. He sees that Hansen is arriving on the shores of the queen side, and he plays f4. Position begins exploding. Knight goes back to g6. Magnus plays the best move, which is bishop out to d3. We have takes on a3. We have takes on a3. How do you get to this pawn? Well, Hansen clearly thinks it's like this. Queen to b2. At this point, White actually has to play a defensive move. He has to play knight to c2. The point is that now you can play bishop to d4, and the game goes on. You have very good pressure, right? You can play bishop d4, e5. I told you a while ago, if the center opens up, it's bad news. But Magnus here plays rook b1, and his intention must have been that when the queen takes, he's going to put something on b5. Knight b5, bishop b5, like, for example, this. Take, the rook is hit. Knight c4 hits the queen. Queen's kind of lost and dancing around. But when rook b1 came with the attack on the queen, Eric Hansen saw danger levels. And Magnus has made a fatal mistake. Right? Uh-oh. If you take, I take the knight with check. You're going to lose a pawn. You're probably going to lose a second pawn, and you're not going to get anything to b5, and you're just going to be losing. And a couple moves later, in this position, I mean, here I think Hansen had an immediate win. He had knight to d5, which there's a lot of tactics flying all over the board. You might think that pawn takes is possible, but rook e3 comes, and both knights are hanging. So that's just bad news. But in this position, I think that Magnus wanted to maybe he might have had grabbed the bishop and tried to click off, because he just played bishop takes a4 and hung a piece in one move and resigned. In fact, he took on a4 and resigned. He didn't even give Hansen an opportunity to play this move, which, listen, he doesn't have the same rating as Magnus. I'm pretty sure he would have played that move, all right? I think even some of you would have played this move. So Eric Hansen beats Magnus Carlsen. Like, this dude just won't stop. I mean, he just won't stop. He's having an unbelievable run. Magnus did win a very nice game. We will take he won a nice game, sorry, before this. We're not going to look at that game, but he did win a nice game before this. So he signs the deal with Puma, but unfortunately, Hansen does get the win. Now, game between Andrei Sipenko and PRAGG Ramesh Babu. PRAGG was in the news yesterday for many, many, many reasons. Number one, he was like the youngest player in a long time, if not ever, to beat Magnus. He didn't beat him in Classical. He beat him in an online rapid game, and Magnus just had COVID. Might still have it. But it made the news like crazy. PRAGG was on Indian national news on Twitter, 16 million followers. PRAGG was shouted out by one of the greatest cricket players in the history of India. Listen, by the way, I saw some stuff on Twitter. People were arguing about this. I don't know much about cricket here in the States, but Mr. Tendulkar, Sachin, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, tweeted out in support of PRAGG. That guy has like 40 million Twitter followers. I mean, it was insane, the hype that he generated. So shout out to PRAGG on the win. Hopefully he can keep it going. The entire country of India is celebrating. And listen, I have no beef about cricket, all right? Please don't. I don't know anything. I'm just reporting the news. And PRAGG made this game very interesting against the young, talented player. Oh, I gotta crack my back. From Russia, Yesipenko. This is a Rossalimo, and it's a mainline Rossalimo for a couple moves, but it gets real weird real fast. So normally White plays d3 here. h3, puts the pawns on light squares. Long-term pressures Black's queenside. Yesipenko plays a4. I don't know what it is with Yesipenko in the move a4. This bastard at this point is going to be playing it on the first move. He's been playing a4 in every game that I've shown, and the point is that you want black to not get to play b6. Black really likes a nice structure here, and you want to just attack the queen side. PRAGG plays g5. All principles are out the door. We have g4 on the board, and a couple moves later we might have h5, or we just won't. We just have bishop e6, and we're just going to act like this is normal. Like it's normal to just push your g-pawn to g4. When they do it, it's like, oh my god, look at these young, talented grandmasters taking risks in the opening. When you do it, it's, yo, what is wrong with you? You need help, you idiot. Why are you doing this? Stop. But, you know, you got to earn the respect that they get. So knight c4, knight e7. Bishop e3. I told you this is what white wants, and Yesipenko has a very nice position here. He gets to take on b6. White has succeeded in all the goals of his opening, right? Knight e2, and position's looking nice and spiffy, but what next? Okay, you developed everything. What's next? Maybe f3. Maybe f3, try to break out on the f-file. Maybe knight f1, knight g3. Take on, you know, e7. That's an interesting idea. Put this here, transfer this knight here, move the bishop. He plays rook f1 and then f3. Now we have h5, and basically at some point, you know, castles, fghg. You might be wondering, why did PRAGG not want his rook here? Well, he had to do something. He had to castle. We have a super complex game. So Yesipenko plays this. The point of this move is to go bishop f6 and weaken the king. However, it can just be met with this move, and I'm sure here that Yesipenko was like, oh, I'm so smart. I made him move his f-pawn, and now he's got light squared weaknesses. But PRAGG just goes to the queen side. He just begins to go to the queen side. He's like, I'm actually completely fine here. And chess is sometimes like that. You play 20 moves, and one of them is bad, and all of a sudden, you're like really tilted and mad, and PRAGG's arriving on the queen side. Center was completely closed. Even the king side sort of held together. And then the question is, well, what should Yesipenko have done, if not try to play bishop g5, bishop e3? Great question. If you let the computer think here, thinks g3. If you gave me like 10 guesses to understand what g3 does, I don't know. It prevents the knight from coming to... And then, like, what's next? I don't know. We'll see what's going to happen next, okay? PRAGG fans. Bishop g5. Anyway, PRAGG has arrived on the queen side, and one man has taken over the initiative, and he's got a really long name. All right, he's got a really long name, and he's the pride of India at the moment. c4 is on the board. PRAGG's taken over. Takes. Pawn sacrifice. b4. Sometimes you offer your opponent something that they might be allergic to. Not actually. That would be criminal. Don't do that. But in online chess, you can offer up a little thing, and now two pieces are suffocating with this very thing you've given them, and now b4, and you're forced out. This is very bad. Very bad, because here comes the rook. Okay? b2 is given away. c2 is given away. You might be like, why didn't he protect? First of all, he can't protect this. He plays b3. I'm going to take this anyway. So you say, why did he protect this, Gotham? And I'll say, pronounce my name correctly. And, well, the thing is, he doesn't have much... Like, if he goes here, he hangs the knight. If he plays rook c1, you should just slap him. Like, what are you doing? You don't need the pawn that much. Yesipenko gives up the pawn to get a little activity, and he tries to play on the queen side, right? But somehow, this absurd-looking blockade proves to be so strong, and PRAGG he's in the driver's seat. But there's still chess to be played. Okay, rook a1, bishop c5, trying to create a little counterplay. All right, where's that counterplay at? Queen come into c5? PRAGG's like, I'm not scared. My king's safe. Okay, you can take my pawn. That's great. Congratulations. Now c5. c5 is not necessary. There was an engine idea here, knight to g8, but, you know, he's PRAGG. He's not the engine. He plays c5, sacking a pawn to mess up the coordination of these pieces. Queen comes into d3. Yesipenko comes back this way. Check. Bishop takes c4, and it's all falling apart. If you take on c4, I check you and I mate you on the very next move. So his king has to protect. And PRAGG wins. PRAGG wins a very, very complex game. This pawn on g4, it wasn't quite the same pawn as this, because the h-pawn took, but that pawn, like, PRAGG little brothered Yesipenko, even though Yesipenko's like twice his size. He just, you know, like when you put your hand on your younger sibling, like on their head, and they can't get any closer. That's like what that pawn did. It just didn't let that side of the board move. A wild game. I mean, PRAGG wins an unbelievably complex Rossalimo. Yeah, I mean, he's having maybe not the greatest tournament in terms of qualification, but he is having a great tournament in terms of very nice performances. Third game I would like to show you is the game between NEPO and Hans Niemann. Yeah, I mean, Hans is gonna try to put a dent in this locomotive, which is Jan. Jan hasn't lost since the first game. All right, like, I don't know when these guys have played. Maybe it's round 9, maybe around 10. But I mean, Jan is smashing this field, and the prize fund here is also based on how many games you win. That's a new rule. So they're incentivizing victory. So Jan's already made like 6 grand, 7 grand. He's gonna go spend it on some good stuff. And we have h6. So this is an anti-fried liver. By the way, a very, very useful tool for intermediate and beginner players. Like, if you guys are playing e4, e5, and you're tired of getting fried livered, I know there's the tracks there, but many h6 systems are very, very tricky because they prevent white from ever going to g5. The thing is, though, that they're tough to play at the highest level. And here, Jan doesn't castle, he doesn't play c3, d4, he plays knight c3. Kind of a rare move, but very natural. And normally here, black develops the bishop and then plays d6. Hans plays d6 right away. This move Stockfish doesn't love d6, but actually it scores quite well. It scores like 48% for white, so black is winning more than white in these positions. That might not mean the quality of the opening, that just might mean the quality of the people who play it. Jan here plays d4. So he basically wastes tempo because he gets a scotch game. Like, he gets like a scotch with knight c3, bishop c4. So imagine, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, d4, and now for whatever stupid reason, d6, bishop c4, and the following position. Except black gets an extra move. Black gets an extra move. So we have the exact same thing on the board, but black gets an extra move. These moves don't make that much sense because you kind of want it to develop. Hans plays bishop g4, pinning the knight to the queen, and we have bishop b5 by Nepo. Very, very tricky move, wasting another tempo. He's only able to get away with this because black isn't able to develop easily. If black takes on d4, Nepo's going to come out with the queen. And because of this pin, he's going to probably castle queenside. So Hans blocks the pin here with the queen. The best move is knight d7. You can also bring this back passively, but then takes, and white just gets quick development. Knight d7 is the best move. We have queen a4, and very funny moment here. a6, right? All right, do something with this bishop. And Nepo goes, why don't you do something with your pawn, you bozo? Hans is like, oh yeah, I didn't actually create a threat. That's a bit of a problem. So a6 looks like you want to play it. I mean, what else can you do? If bishop 2e7, I play rook g1, right? So this voluntary damaging of my own structure is good because I get the active rook. And a couple moves later, takes on c6. Doesn't trade queens, very instructive. Not yet, at least. Doesn't trade the queens. And rook g1, g6, long castle. Okay. This is very bad news for Hans, because I have won the battle on the king side. So your king can't castle because I'm monitoring both of your pawns. If you castle your king, check. Oopsies, can't take my rook, you're pinned. Beautiful attack here from Nepo. Bishop d4, and it's time to sound the alarms in the black position. It's been 15 moves, but it's already time to sound the alarms. This is very, very bad. Very bad. Rook f8. I mean, look, this is as if both rooks tried to castle, and the king just got drunk and fell asleep. He was like, ah, get at it. I don't even know, what even is castling, dude? Anyway, king got drunk. Yesterday, the king was living in the queen's boyfriend's basement. Today, the king is drunk. I mean, well, one thing should naturally follow the other. If you don't know what I'm talking about, watch yesterday's recap. It didn't do so well in the viewership because I uploaded at 5 p.m. on a Sunday, which is a very bad day to upload. But what can I do? That's when the games end. Bishop takes f6. And anytime you are ready to attack, sometimes you have to give away a little bit of your material, in this case, a trade, to plant your knight very strongly, plant your pieces very strongly, and make progress. f4. You have very good piece positioning. It's time to just go full Wreck-It Ralph. And Hans decides to sack some material. He gives away a couple pawns in order to not get checkmated. The problem is that Jan is good enough to win whether it's checkmate or not. He just moves the pawns forward. Hans tries to create a little counterplay. Rook takes d5. Jan's like, I'm up 3 pawns, dude. Like, I don't know what you want. King a5. trying to win the a-pawn back, but the problem is that white just has way too many pawns. And he pushes them. Rook e8 is a very nice move. And the back rank extraction, d6, you don't even need to take this because d7, d8. You don't need to rush. It's never too late to screw up your advantage completely and not queen and actually not even win the game. Rook a8 check. And this is winning because the king has to go to one of two squares, on which it will be greeted with a fork, on which it will be greeted with a capture of the bishop, and then white will promote the pawn and win. Folks, Nepo might have the cops called on him pretty soon because he is just murdering this field. I mean, and Hans, I felt bad. I never want to showcase a game when I never want to showcase a game where a guy is like struggling, you know, like and Hans, I think at some point had like 4 or 5 losses in a row, and so but it was a really nice win by Nepo. So I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to pile it on Hans, but that's very nice win by Jan. This was a very fun game between KEYMER and Vladislav Artemyev. So this was a Slav defense. It was a slow Slav defense, and all of these moves have occurred before. In fact, they occurred 2.5 weeks ago. All these moves, every single one of these moves, for a very long time, like I think up until this very moment, occurred in the game between Vincent KEYMER with white and Danil Dubov, Russian Grandmaster in the Grand Prix. They drew that game. So KEYMER goes back to something he likes very much, and Artemyev plays h4. KEYMER plays h4. A bishop before was played by Artemyev. We have h4. Knight to f8. f3. Trying to play for e4. Trying to play for g4. Very, very complex game. Knight to e6. Bishop d3. And black plays c5. Now, this is just very bold stuff. So this bishop isn't dying because if you try to attack it, black can not just take this, but black can also take on d4. Danger levels, right? And then I'm not really sure you actually want to get involved in this mess. So not so good. So we have takes, king b1 moving off of the c file. Black castle short. Now, what's about to follow is very violent stuff. a3. I mean, kings are castled on opposite sides. Both sides are ready to just pounce on one another. a3, the bishop has to move, right? Oh. If you take the bishop, this is what we like to call a fishing pole or a fish hook. It's when you bait a bishop and a rook like this, your friendly rook is on the line of attack against the enemy king. And if you were to take the bishop, the fish hook, right, you catch him, and now, oops, and there's a trap in the Rui Lopez. You can look this up. This is kind of the idea. KEYMER's probably like, oh, damn, well, that's annoying. Queen b3, and now I'm going to get him to take. So we have bishops versus knights. Who's going to win? Pointed hats or horses? g4, h5 still very much on the cards. Artemyev just grabs a pawn. He's like, I'm not scared. Do something to me. Rook e1. Queen f4. Do something. But now that the rooks are over here, it's not looking very likely like h5 is going to do anything. I mean, what if I just take? I don't have a rook on the h-file anymore. So bishop e5. Artemyev's like, bro, if you're going to give me pawns, I'm going to take them. Like, I don't know what you want from me, right? You had your opportunities when I took on e3. You could have taken on f6. You could have went for an attack. KEYMER could have done this. He could have done this. Knight c5 hit both pieces. He could have had something like this, but he didn't do that. Instead, Artemyev is just up 2 pawns, and his queen is still harassing everybody. She hasn't had enough. She finally gets booted to b6. a4, knight d7, and here come the knights. And these knights are really not too shabby. You can't take on d5. There's rook d8. I mean, you can try to play this position, try to block. No. So d4. And Artemyev is just like, all right, cool. You're not going to attack me. So I'm going to put all my pieces on good squares. I'm going to... How many moves has his queen made? Like, can we count that? Somebody should count that. How many moves his queen has made thus far? Oh, look, another one. A lot. A lot of moves. Probably about 12 moves, if not half of the 32 moves that we are looking at. d3, bishop takes. If you wait more, I'm just gonna, I'm gonna take on f3. My queen's gonna make even more moves. So takes, rook d5, patient move. He can't move his bishop. And Artemyev just slowly but surely sucks the life out of the white position. The queen finally gets traded. He trades everything. 5 pawns for black, 3 pawns for white. And now the king arrives. The king's like, it's my turn. See, this is when the kings begin to escape the queen's boyfriend's basement. toward the end game. That's when they're like, oh, hello. Yes, I'm going to make my way to the center now. Yeah, and actually the black king was the one to decide the game. The king got to d3 and did some damage, started bullying people. King only bullies people when there's nothing that can scare him around. You know, he's kind of a wimp. He's not a very nice guy. King to e3 and KEYMER's like, I've had enough. I can't do anything. So Artemiev is like the master of taking the bait and defending. He's so good at it. He defends so well. He's so resourceful, very solid, smart player. 2 more games. Are you bored yet? Don't be bored. Like, if you're thinking of clicking off this video, hey, that's what I do when Benji tries to bite things he's not supposed to bite. Clap my hands. Among other things, been learning slowly that dogs don't understand no. They understand only like positive reinforcement for good things. They don't understand negative actions. They're kind of like you and your blunders. Like you don't understand the severity of your blunders. That's why you do them 35 times. Gotham, that's why you'll never be a GM. Shut up. I know, but I haven't accepted that reality, but I might as well. Anyway, back to the recap. So the next game that I have for you is the game between Anish Giri and Ding Liren, who started this tournament really, really well, Ding Liren, but has a rough second day yesterday, and he's looking to, do well today. Now, this game, reverse, King's Indian. Giri played this against Shankland. Giri played this against Shankland, excuse me, some while ago, and Giri also played this with black. I actually used the game that Giri played against Boris Gelfand. If you look at the database of this position, when black gets this kind of symmetrical structure, some pin here, and tries to castle long, I played like this against Nicholas Theodorou, Las Vegas 2021, round 6. But Giri also played like this against Shankland. But shockingly, the move Long Castle was not played by Ding Liren. I don't know. Looking at this, I really like Long Castle. Ding Liren plays Short Castle, which is a novelty. Anish plays the move Rook E1. Now, that move looks dumb, but the point is that you relieve yourself of both pressures, off the D knight getting pinned to the rook and off the bishop. And you want to play Knight C4, attack the queen side, and play Knight C4, Knight E3. In positions of pawn structure symmetry, it's good to control enemy corresponding squares. So both knights can't get in, right? So Rook D8, Knight C4, and Ding plays the move Bishop C8. He goes all the way back. Now, if Ding takes on F3, he's just giving up the bishop for no reason whatsoever. If he plays H5, he gets trapped. If he goes to E6, then he hangs the pawn on E5. And if he goes to D7, why is the bishop there? Like, you're going to have to move it again. So that's why he takes it all the way back to the home square, because actually in some ways he might get it out this way. He doesn't block his rook. Anish plays B4. The best move by black here, and I believe the only move that equalizes, is the move rook to D3, which is kind of tough to find in a rapid game, because you're like, what is my rook doing? It's just going to get booted, but it's not. It's actually very hard to boot the rook, because here I just take. So Ding plays B5, and then attacks the queen side. But when you are overwhelmed on a side of the board, you just more pieces, right? It's like you and your 2 friends go to the park, right? You and your 2 friends go to the park looking for a fight. You're going to get in a fight with somebody. The other folks at the park have 6 friends. 6 friends. Oh my God, it's way more than... I don't even have 6 friends. I'm not even joking. I don't even have 6 friends. I got 4. 5? Well, now that 5th one's going to be upset I didn't think of them. But good thing I didn't say any names. So, yeah, I mean, you're just going to the park 6 on 3. So this is not going to work. If you take here, I push. We saw that. We saw PRAGG do that. You remember that? Right? You try to shove that pawn forward and then you take back. He takes like this, but now he takes like this. And when it all settles, Anish is not a pawn up, but this is annoying. It makes it very difficult for black to move. And you can bet that this game is going to be decided on the A7 square. Rook D6. Nice capture on E5. Knight H5. Some pressure here, right? Rook A8. And I think maybe Ding... I mean, he could have already kind of checked out of this position, but Rook A8 is so annoying because the Rook can't do both, right? And when you play Bishop D7 looking for tactics, if Rook takes, then Bishop takes, and if you take, then this, obviously, Anish just brings this other Rook. And rook a7, and Ding Liren resigns. Ding Liren made it 22 moves in this game. Crazy. Crazy Anish wins. It's not crazy that Anish won a game. It's crazy that beat a guy of Ding Liren's caliber that fast. So Anish has had some serious success playing the system with white. And the final game that I would like to show you, let me just turn off this. The final game that I would like to show you is the game between Magnus Carlsen and Jan Krzysztof Duda. This one was our final game of the day. It was knight c3, so kind of an invitation to play a Grand Prix or a close Sicilian or some Sicilian sideline. But then Magnus put his queen in the middle and attacked the rook, and Duda didn't see it. No, I'm just kidding. Duda played knight f6. This system is very tricky for black because there are lines here where white even allows the knight to hit the queen, slides back, and castles long. There's also lines like bishop b5. And the point is to meet knight c6 with taking. And basically just damaging the structure. Excuse me, not damaging the structure, but making the structure really difficult to actually move because everything is weak. Bishop g5, castles, etc. In this game, Magnus took the hit to his queen and played f3. f3 is useful for two reasons. Number one, you want to play g4. Number two, you want to prevent knight activity and maybe enemy bishop activity. So f3, very interesting system. Knight to e2 and black castles, right? Black castles. Magnus plays h4. He's like, I'm not even going to spend time castling. Like, I'm sure at any of these moments, Duda was like, all right, he's just going to castle long. All right, I don't know why he's not castling. He's obviously going to castle. All right, knight e5. Now, what I always tell people is if you get h4, just play h5. In this case, though, the softening up of both of these pawns is a little bit too much. But yeah, in general, if someone's playing h4 and wants to play h5 and can play h5, you should just play h5. That's just what I tell people. h4, h5. You'll never get mated if you play h4, h5. You just won't. Knight e5, though. And Duda's trying to solve his problems by just saying, Magnus, I don't know what the hell you're doing, man. Like, I got no clue. This looks dumb. I don't know what this is. Stop it. Magnus is like, look, I'm going to mate you. Dude is like, I just saw what you did against Hansen, man. I'm going to beat you, and I'm going to also end up in the Gotham recap, all right? It's going to be 2 losses for Magnus in the Gotham recap. Magnus is like, I don't watch Gotham. I got much better ways to spend my time. Dude is like, you're lost. It's really good content. Knight d3. Yeah, so white wants to go bishop h6, bishop takes, queen h6, queen h8 mate. So what is Duda going to do? Go. Bishop h6. Knight. Hang. What? Kick. Back. Now, g4 here would be tragic. This is what you would play. You'd be like, oh, g4, and then it's mate. I'm so smart. And then g4 happens, and your opponent goes here, and you lose a queen, and you go, no! Yeah. Rook takes h5. A very common idea to sacrifice this h-file rook and get the queen to g5. And you are going to take with check. And in this position, white plays bishop to d3. And black resigns. Black resigns. Black is absolutely feeble here. There's nothing. Black resigns because the idea of white is to castle long. And you couldn't do that. You couldn't do that in this position. You couldn't castle long because the queen. So bishop d3. If you play f6, that's a nice move. It's a good move. And actually, if you castle long here, then king g7 and there is no mate. You actually have to be incredibly careful. And then if you play rook h1, rook h8, and you lose because you have to trade everything. So just be careful. Make sure you do things by force. In chess, you have to give a check. And then the king is cut off. Very instructive. At this level, they see it. At your level, my level, sometimes even, we make these mistakes. We take it for granted. But yeah, Magnus wins in 20 moves for his final game of the day. So not a bad day, honestly. Not that bad of a day. Yeah, Jan is destroying the tournament. I mean, like I said, he should have the cops called. Second place at the end of 3 days is Magnus, Artemiev, and KEYMER. GIRI, Hansen after them, and then it is a 3-way tie for people who have 18 out of 36 points, but I will just, I will put a link in the description. Although I've forgotten to do that the last couple of days. Anyway, folks, thanks for hanging out with me. I'm gonna go eat some food. I'm gonna go hang out with Lucy and Benji. And, yeah, Stay awesome. I'll see you tomorrow for the end of the prelims. Get out of here.